Last time, we helped the Mistress get a little bit more flashy. Stay tuned to this final segment where we help her come to a stop.
I am almost done with the Mistress Makeover. All I have left is a braking system, and after that I have some chrome over brake lines and some PVC brake pads. Let's throw those on and wrap this project up. Alright, so here's the brake lines. Let's open up the package and see what we got. So everything that comes in the package, we have the two front brake lines, we have the rear brake line, we have the banjo fittings, we have a piece of hardware, I think it might go to the back, I don't know. We have a sticker and we have the instructions. So let's see how that works. First thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to drain these reservoirs. Now I could use a turkey baster or a syringe to get the fluid out, but I found this vacuum brake bleeder at Harbor Freight for like 30 bucks, so I'm just going to use that.
Alright guys, it was at this point that I realized I lost my audio, so I'm going to kind of wing it, if you will. But here you can see I'm removing the little metal clip attached to the master cylinder. This is going to make it so I can get the cap off. Don't lose that screw, I dropped it. But here you can see the little metal clip and the screw. Nothing fancy. Put a lot of rags down, don't want brake fluid on stuff, it's corrosive, enough said. Now you'll notice there's a little white plastic ring and then there's the rubber cap. Make sure you put those somewhere clean. Come on, focus, you stupid camera. Focus! Ugh, I hate this camera.
Goodbye.
Now I put my vacuum brake bleeder in there and just pull the trigger. And you can see it cleaned up pretty well. Now at this point I'm going to the left caliper. You can see up here we got the brake nipple I'm pointing at. You're just going to remove the little rubber cover. And I'm putting the brake bleeder on there. If you have a pump or do a gravity fed, do whatever you need to do. Then you're just going to take a wrench, put it on, and break her loose. Ugh, just like that. Then once you're all set, I pull a trigger, or a pump, or a gravity feed, and it sends it through. Now I have a newer bike, so the brake fluid is still clear. If you had an older bike, you'd actually see it going through the tube. Now you're just going to do the other side. It's the same exact process as the left one, but this is the right caliper, so yeah. Now it's good to note, if your brake bleeder or hose isn't getting good suction on the nipple, you can apply some brake grease to it and it'll make a better seal. Afterwards, the brake lever should be easy to push. That'll signify there's no more fluid left in the master cylinder. You can see here, you can push it with one finger, even your pinky. Now at this point, I'm removing the brake line from the caliper. I'm just going to break the banjo bolt loose and then take it out. Nice. I don't know what that hair that's hanging from the brake line is, but whatever. Now you do this to both sides. So again, make sure you're using a rag. You don't want brake fluid, corrosive, enough said. Now at this point I actually took the caliper off to change the brake pads. I'm not going to show you how to do that because it makes the video a lot longer than it needs to be. I'm actually going to do a how to change your brake pads in the future, so stay tuned, you'll see that soon. But you will notice in this video that the crush washer is still on the caliper. Make sure you remove that before you put on the new brake lines. Just a tip. I'll catch you after I replace the brake pads.
Goodbye.
Now you can see on the right side, I'm taking off this bracket. It's what holds the joint on the brake line.
Goodbye.
If you go to the left side, there's also a bracket, but it's a little bit different. Same concept though, remove the nut, it'll come right off. You may have to wiggle a little bit, it is stuck on the threads. Now you're going to want to follow the brake line from the master cylinder down. In between, you're going to see this little bolt on a bracket. I find it easiest to go from underneath. If you stick a ratcheting wrench under there, it pops loose, it'll come right off. Now if you go up top, here is the banjo bolt that hooks up to the master cylinder. You're going to notice this wire is in the way. You're going to want to pull some slack in it, get some slack loose, so that way you can actually get in there. I pull it loose. You'll see I have plenty of space now. And I could even tuck it aside a little bit if I want. But put some rags down again, there will be a mess. You don't want to get this brake fluid on any of your paint. Once again, stick a ratcheting wrench or just a wrench in there and crack her loose. This one is pretty hard. It was a pain in the ass. And there you go. I found it easiest to remove the brake line from the bottom. This makes it so you only have to worry about one banjo fitting leaking all over everything.
Okay, we're on my workbench. I want to take a look at the differences between the core Moto and the OEM. This is going beyond the point of actual just build materials, because we know this is stainless steel braided brake line, and we know this is rubber brake line, which is still very, very good, but not awesome like stainless steel. So let's start off at the top where it connects to the master cylinder and work our way down. So the OEM has a single banjo bolt that hooks to the underside of the master cylinder. It's got a little pin over here that just acts as a stop for when you're trying to tighten it. It makes it so it doesn't spin, and that's pretty much it. Down to the core Moto, it actually has two separate banjo fittings that go on top of each other when you install it. It actually, the kit comes with a special banjo bolt that has spots for two of them to accommodate both of them. And that's pretty much it there. Moving down this way, we go to the point where it mounts behind the fender. You can see the OEM one still has its bracket on it. I haven't removed that yet. And the core Moto line just has a rubber boot for this to go on. So this is going to be something that I'm going to have to swap before the installation, but I'll do that in a little bit. With an exception for the bracket, again, there's no real big changes there. It's pretty much straightforward, with the exception of the OEM line still has one brake line going down at this point, and the core Moto has two lines going down. Let's move up to the splitter. Alright, now your OEM line actually has a splitter in it. It actually has this acts as the mount on the right side of the bike. It goes to the right side of the fender, and then it's got the brake line that goes to the right side of the fender, and then the brake line that goes to the left side of the fender, or the right and left calipers. Core Moto doesn't have any because, well, again, it's got two lines, so it doesn't need a splitter. This is actually good because count the failing points this is going to have. 1, 2, 3. How many does this have? Count them. There is none. Now after the splitter, it actually goes down to two lines and hooks up to the left and right calipers. Core Moto is already in two lines, so that's what it does. The only thing that we're going to have to do here is, on the core Moto, it's actually got a grommet on one side and nothing on the other. I think we have to swap over the bracket that goes to the left side of the bike on the OEM one and move it to the core Moto lines. And then that's what this little bracket thing that came with it, I wasn't sure about when I opened it, that goes to the other line to hold it onto the fender. So, alright, I gotta move all the brackets from the OEM to the core Moto. Once that's done, I can take this and put it on the Mistress.
These brackets just pull apart. They're just made out of sheet metal. They come off pretty easy. You'll notice in this grommet there's a slit. It's kind of glued to the brake line, so I had to use a flathead screwdriver to kind of break it loose. Once I got a corner up though, I was able to pick at it and just peel it right off. It's a light adhesive, nothing too strong. This grommet goes on the caliper side of the core Motos. The line that doesn't have the grommet gets the grommet. This bracket is actually the one that's underneath the master cylinder on the steering stem. You're actually just going to take that and put it on the grommet that has both lines going through it on the core Moto, and then just pinch it together and it'll be good to go. Now the two brackets that are remaining, one is the one you took from the OEM brake lines, and the other one is the one that came in the core Moto kit. Just put those on the grommets towards the calipers and squeeze them tight, and you're ready to install.
Now at this point, all the brake fluid's out of here, so you can get rid of some of these rags to make it easier on you. That was the washer. But then you're just going to take this, careful of the paint,
Goodbye.
and slowly reach your hand around and grab it from the inside and pull it on up. You're going to want to make sure that you stay behind the fork. You don't want to have it weave around in between the fork. And pull it up.
Goodbye.
Now at this point you actually have the special banjo bolt for the master cylinder. You're going to put a crush washer on the bottom. Then you're going to take the first banjo fitting and put it through, and then followed by another crush washer. You're going to take the last banjo fitting and push that through on top of that, and then followed by a crush washer. Once that's done, you can hand tighten it into the master cylinder. Make sure it's going in flush. You don't want to screw anything up with that because cross-threading equals bad.
You can see the positioning of these are critical. I had it over a little bit and it interfered with the little box that has wires that goes to the kill switch. So I moved the top banjo over to the right a little bit, and then the bottom banjo is a little bit offset from that, so that way I can ensure that there's a good seal in there.
At this point, you're just going to screw in that bracket that's located below your master cylinder between the steering stem and the fairings. And once that's tightened, you're good to move down to the calipers.
Now I'm going to separate the left from the right caliper. Done.
Now to hook the calipers up, we're going to take the banjo bolt, put a crush washer on it, feed that through the banjo fitting of your brake line. Then we're going to put another crush washer on that for the bottom, and then just hand tighten it into the caliper. Once you're snug, then you're going to want to take a ratchet and tighten it down. Refer to your torque specs in your owner's manual. I always prefer the German torques of Gudentight, but I suggest you get the actual specs. Don't forget, once you're done with that side, to do the other side. Now you got to put the brackets onto the front fender that hold the brake lines in place. The left one I did need to pinch closed with vice grips. You can see there's a couple scrapes on there. I touched that up with some black touch-up paint. You don't even really notice it anymore. But on the left side, there's a little acorn nut that came with the OEM bracket. You just use that same nut and tighten it down, and you're good to go. The right side is a little bit different. You use the silver chrome bracket that came with the Moto brake lines. That came with a little Allen head. You just screw that in, and again, same thing. Once it's in, you're good.
Now that the front brakes are done, I can move on to the back.
Now the rears are a lot like the fronts.
Goodbye.
First, you're going to be taking off the cover for the master cylinder reservoir. There's two screws. They come right out. You may have to hold back the fender a little bit to get to them, but they come out pretty easy. Then you're going to remove the black cap. This is made out of a metal of some sorts. And then there's a little plastic piece that goes between the black cap and the expansion boot inside the reservoir. This may be stuck to the boot a little bit. It peels right off though. It's mainly suction. And then the boot comes out. Make sure you don't drip anything on any paint, as usual. After that, I take my suction and suck out all the fluid inside the reservoir. Again, if you're using a different method, then a turkey baster would probably be best. At this point, I'm going to put towels down below the rear caliper. I don't want any brake fluid on the swing arm. And I'm going to hook up my hose up to the brake nipple. And like before, I'm just going to pop the nipple loose and suck all the fluid out. At this point, there's a bracket in the center of the line that holds it in place. You're just going to pop that screw out. It's a little Allen head. Now at this point, I don't know what happened to my video, but I forgot to record removing the rear banjo bolt off the caliper. If you take a look, this is the banjo bolt. Remove this and the rear of the line falls off. Remember, there's brake fluid in there, so be careful. Now we're going to place some rags around the rear master cylinder. And then you're going to grab a ratchet and put it on the banjo bolt. It's very tight, so it'll pop loose pretty quick. And then just take it out. And as usual, there's going to be a little bit of brake fluid, so watch your drippage.
So once again, we're going to compare some lines. Here's the Moto stainless steel brake line for the rear, and here's the OEM rubber rear. Not really much to say about this one. The only thing we got to do is switch over the little bracket from the OEM one to the stainless steel one.
Install is simple. You want to use the same banjo bolt, crush washer, banjo fitting, crush washer as before, and just hand tighten both ends. That's both the master cylinder end that you just saw and the caliper that you're on now. Once they're both hand tightened and you know you don't have to adjust the line at all, you can tighten them both down with a ratchet. Again, please check your specs in your repair manual for torque settings. Don't go by me, I just hand tighten to what I feel is good. Once you got both sides tightened in, feel free to put that center bracket back in place. Once that's in place, we're good to move on.
Alright, all the hardware for the front and the rear brakes, the brake lines, the brake pads are all in. Unfortunately, I ran into a small problem. That is my vacuum brake bleeder. It runs off my compressor, and my compressor is out of air. Now, why am I not going to run it? It's 3 a.m. and about 20 feet on the other side of that wall is my wife and dog sleeping, and I really don't want to wake up my dog, so I'll get back to this in the morning.